Let us continue the second part of Module 3. In this part of the lecture, we will compare the salivary glands, the esophagus, and the stomach of different domestic animals. We may begin with the salivary glands. All animals have the three major salivary glands, which include the parotid, mandibular, and the sublingual salivary gland. In addition, carnivores like dogs and cats have the zygomatic gland. These are large buccal glands medial to the zygomatic arc. Anatomically, animals differ in the opening of the parotid duct. In dogs, it opens at the level of the upper carnassial teeth. In cats, the duct opens at the level of the second cheek teeth. In horse and in ruminants, it opens at the level of the third cheek teeth, while in pig, it opens either at the level of the third and fourth cheek teeth. We can also differentiate the sublingual gland, which can be divided into monostomatic and polystomatic part. All of them have both parts except the horse, with only the polystomatic part of the sublingual gland. The salivary glands are conspicuously well developed in birds and are present in the upper and lower jaw, at the angle of the mouth, and in the tongue. Grossly, variation among species in the esophagus is difficult to identify. However, for the sake of comparison, we can use their muscle tissue component. As you can recall from your histology, a tubular organ like the esophagus is composed of 4 layers or tunics. From inner to outer, we have the tunica mucosa, tunica submucosa, tunica muscularis, and the tunica adventitia or serosa. The tunica muscularis is composed of an outer longitudinal and inner circular muscle. In the esophagus, this layer is striated at the origin of the esophagus, but in some species, it is replaced by smooth muscle at some point in the thorax. In dogs and in ruminants, it is entirely striated all throughout the length of the esophagus. In pigs, it is striated until the last few inches near the cardia, and the most caudal part is composed of smooth muscle. In the horse and in cat, the first 2/3 is striated while the caudal 1/3 is smooth. Grossly, in ruminants and in horse, the lumen narrows at the thoracic inlet and the esophageal hiatus of the diaphragm, which predispose them to choke at those sites. In birds, there is a distensible dilation in the esophagus called crop or inglovis. This serves as a temporary storage while moistening and softening the feeds ingested by the bird. Now let's discuss the stomach. The stomach of domestic animals vary considerably in form and distribution of the different types of the mucosal lining of the said organ. Glandular stomach are lined only by glandular epithelium, while composite stomach have an area of glandular and non-glandular mucosa. Cats and dogs have glandular stomach, while horse and pig have composite. Ruminants have complex composite stomach because of the 4 compartments, the rumen, reticulum, and omasum being non-glandular, and the abomasum as the glandular. Much of this diversity is clearly adaptive and reflects the habitual diet of the various groups. The concentrated diet of carnivores is most easily digested, and these animals have a small and simple stomach and a relatively short and uncomplicated intestine. The fodder of herbivores is easily managed. It has a lower nutritive value and must be consumed in large amounts, thus they have a voluminous and a more complicated gastrointestinal tract. The stomach of a dog, when empty or partly filled, is shaped like C, with its convex surface facing caudoventrally. The funnel-shaped cardia is rather wide, which may be related to the ease of the dog in vomiting. In cats, the stomach is also C-shaped with narrower lumen than in dogs. The angular notch is very deep. This is pronounced in some breeds of cat, making some difficulties in gastroscopy. The stomach of horse is small relative to its size. The fundus is extended to form the saccus cecus. The glandular and non-glandular part of the stomach is well demarcated by the margo plicatus. Here is an enlarged image to show the demarcation between the glandular and the non-glandular stomach. The cardiac sphincter is well developed in horse, and with the oblique entrance of the esophagus to the stomach, it makes it difficult for them to vomit. The pig's stomach is characterized by the presence of a diverticulum surrounding the fundus called diverticulum ventriculi. The pylorus has a prominent fleshy protuberance called the torus pyloricus. Birds have two stomachs, the glandular proventriculus and the muscular ventriculus or the gizzard. The proventriculus lies against the parietal surface of the liver and has a function similar to the glandular stomach of mammals. The gizzard, on the other hand, followed immediately after the proventriculus. The internal lining is covered by a coarse yellow layer that resembles a grinding plate called choline membrane. Small stones and other hard foreign particles or grit swallowed with the feed are present in the gizzard to further assist with the mechanical breakdown of the ingesta. Now we move to the ruminant stomach. Their stomach is composed of 4 compartments, namely rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum. The rumen, reticulum, and omasum are the non-glandular compartments, while the abomasum is the glandular or the true stomach of the ruminants. The rumen or paunch is the largest compartment in an adult ruminant, acting as a fermentation vat. Internally, the mucosa is studded with numerous papillae as shown here. Reticulum is the smallest and the most cranial compartment in large ruminants. However, in small ruminants, the omasum is smaller than the reticulum. Internally, it has a honeycomb appearance with grooves. Normally, accidentally ingested nails, metals, and other pointed scraps were trapped in the reticulum. The reticulum is located closely to the heart and can puncture the said organ, thus can cause a case called traumatic gastritis or the hardware disease. Omasum is also known as many plies or sometimes called the butcher's Bible or book because of the page appearance of its muscular laminae. Finally, the abomasum or the true stomach is same with the non-ruminant stomach with glandular mucosa and rugae. It has torus pyloricus, which is the same structure found in the stomach of pig. Let us discuss in detail the anatomy of the rumen, especially its external and internal features. To begin with, please note that grooves are the external depressions in the rumen, while pillars correspond to the externally located grooves. Left and right longitudinal grooves divide the rumen into a dorsal and ventral sac. The cranial end of the dorsal sac is called the cranial sac or ruminal atrium, while the cranial end of the ventral sac is called the ruminal recess. The dorsal and ventral coronary grooves constrict the caudal ends of the dorsal and ventral sacs, forming the caudodorsal and caudoventral sacs. The ruminoreticular groove separates the cranial sac of the rumen from the reticulum. The same structures are seen internally. However, instead of grooves, the structure is named as pillars. And that ends our lecture on the part 2 of this module. You may now proceed to part 3, which will compare the intestinal tract of different domestic animals.